The Sydney Sixers, they're up next, and they're a fun team given the fact that we do at least have an early enough double game week this year compared to last, with this year being round 3. There are a lot of guys in here that can score really well, and there's a few guys that are somewhat undervalued or could definitely, I think, perform well enough to be worth getting into your side, make a little bit of cash, fill a role either in the bowling slot, the batting slot, or in somewhat as an all-rounder with a Jack Edwards or a Hayden Kerr, these types of players. And we do have Akil Hussain coming over as well, but not from round 1. So he's going to be a really interesting player from round 3 for those that do want to take the plunge there. Sydney Sixers are always a team that are in that top couple, whether or not they're winning the comp or not. They're always in the semis or the final, and are just a terrific team to watch, and therefore with them winning usually means that their players are performing in some way. So if we look from 1 to 11 with the Sixers, you're probably going to want to start with 1, maybe 2. I think it could be fun with the Stars, with the Sixers, and the Heat with a double in round 3. I think having a collection of a few of those guys, obviously with the Stars, you'll probably have anywhere between 4 and 6, and therefore to get to the full allotment of double game players, which I think want to get close to, somewhere between that 9 to 11 in double game players in round 3. Having 1 or 2 Sixers, 1 or 2 Heat players is going to be a pretty solid strategy as well. And whether you take a punt on one of these, I've got a couple of guys here in highlight in Jack Edwards, in Sean Abbott, that are potentially a little bit undervalued or have a really terrific role. And that's Jack Edwards batting potentially 6, and then Sean Abbott obviously batting around the 9 spot, you would imagine, and didn't take as many wickets last year as he would have hoped, so a little bit of a fallen gun. So those 2 guys especially. And then, at times during the season, we jump on guys like Vince, and then we have Akil Hussain. So you can potentially start with one of these guys in Edwards or Abbott, potentially a Curtis Patterson, if he manages to get the number 3 spot. He's actually in really nice form in first grade at the moment, and for New South Wales. So I think with Curtis, you're picking him on form, not based on how well he's gone in recent Big Bash seasons. But up top, it's Josh Philippe and it's James Vince. And both those guys, they score well enough to be somewhat relevant. Josh Philippe is owned by a lot of people, obviously, in that pretty tough wicket-keeping slot. There's a few guys that you can grab anywhere between that 100 and 150 mark as guys that could do solidly well for you. But Philippe hasn't set the world alight for a while now. And someone like Vince is very much a get him on the good run type of player. Whereas Philippe seems to be like, he'll just go solid on a week-to-week basis. He'll hit 20 off 12, then he'll get 25 off 19, then he'll get 3 and a couple of catches, then he'll get 35. Like, he's just a little bit more consistent. Whereas Vince, you can get the big scores out of him in amongst some lower ones as well. Similar to what you saw with Hales, you grab him for the run rather than grabbing him for his average across the season, which is that 130k price point there. With Patterson at number 3, it's him or Daniel Hughes, and Hughes he was their best batsman last year, which is pretty crazy, and he's just a guy that just continues to churn out runs, whichever format it's in. In T20s, it's usually a little bit slower, but last year he had a really, really good run of it. He could be there round 1, I think, for sure, as he was quality last year, and he probably deserves a spot, but who's he going over? Maxi Bryden from SC Playbook thinks that Curtis Patterson's going to be the 3, but I think it could be either of those 2, and it's going to be very hard to see someone like Jordan Silk be pushed out the side because he does a really, really good job at number 5 there. Enriques has been their captain, so 96k for him, batting at 5 there, or potentially 4. I think he's an interesting one as well, but he's a cheap price for a reason. He hasn't gone too well in the Bash for a while there as well. So that's the top 5. And then Jordan Silk number 5. So that's the top 5 there. It's not super exciting, to be honest with you. I think Philippe and Vince you can grab on runs if they get a little bit cheaper come round 3. I think at 110k, they're definitely someone that you could grab in that wicket-keeper slot or that batting slot. And then moving down to the all-important all-rounders slot, Jack Edwards. With the bowling situation that they've got right now, Jackson Bird likely to be dwarfed coming back from injury. Sean Abbott, Jaffer Shahan, who will likely be in the squad until Akil Hussain comes in. And then you've got, if Hayden Kerr does play, that would be 5th bowler, Jack Edwards, a 6th bowler. But I do think Hayden Kerr is probably the guy, and Jaffa, that do miss out on getting closer to the 4 overs, and you'd imagine that Edwards, Abbott, Dwarshuis, and Bird are the 4 guys that are likely to get their allotment of 3 to 4 overs, and then a split for the 5th bowler between a Kerr and a Chauhan, unless the spin is winning with Jaffa being a leggy there. So that's where we're at the moment. I think Edwards is probably, you'd slot him in for 3 overs a game on average, some 2, some 4, and going from there, and then batting at 6. Likely, if he happens to get a push up the order further, I think that he'll be much higher owned if he manages to sneak into a 4 or a 3, and they play someone else down at 5 and 6 with Silk and someone else there. That would be interesting for sure. Because Hayden Kerr is an interesting one as well at 105k, both with that dual Edwards and Kerr. But with Hayden, we've seen him have terrific seasons, and this past year wasn't a great one. He's had injuries, there's bits and pieces that can go wrong with Hayden Kerr's body, unfortunately, over the last year or so, and he hasn't hit those heights. But we know that he can. At 105k, batting likely at 7 and getting a chance to bowl, you'd say a couple overs a game. It's definitely a really, really decent role. But the fact that it's 7, could be 8, depending on what happens with Akil Haseen when he comes back. Do you want someone that's a 7 or 8 that bowls a couple of overs, and in that scenario, he might not bat in, let's just say every second game he bats, and every second game he bowls 3 overs. That's, a recipe for some games just not performing super well, and some games doing really well. So up to you what you do with that one. Chauhan at 117, I think that, some nice stats about him for sure, but Akil's a worry in round 3 if he just comes in and takes that slot. Sean Abbott, we spoke about him being a fallen gun, so I think he's one of the best picks in this squad, and we'll get the 4 overs. And then, the thing is with Sean is just making sure he does come back from the little stint in the Aussie squad. Dwarshuis at 137, will be at 160 at some point, in my opinion. We see it each year. He has a couple of really good games in a row, but the question is, will it be early? Is he a round 3 target? That's what you're looking at with Ben, and coming back from a partial pec tear injury. And then Jackson Bird, it was his career BBL year last year. He's very, very hard to take at that price at 152k. So I don't think you can take him in your squad. And then you got a few guys in there that just missed the team. You've got Davies, Akil Haseen, one of Curtis Patterson or Hughes, in my opinion. Ben Menenti, Todd Murphy, Mitch Perry, and Smith. So Menenti's likely to be the 4th spinner in line, which is pretty wild once Akil Haseen comes back. So Haseen, a good chance it's Chauhan, then Todd Murphy, or Todd Murphy, then Chauhan, and then Menenti number 4, and then Davies is basically the lone next up batter, following who misses out of Pato and Hughes. So there you go. Not too much to think of it there, just apart from Akil coming back, and then Smithy will play late season. 3rd most expensive guy in the game. So potential targets, I think Sean Abbott and Edwards have to be your 1 and 2, whether it's round 1 or round 3. Abbott's the wicket taker, Edwards has the gun roll, and is really, really cheap in his position for the all-rounder slot. There aren't many guys out there apart from him and Will Sutherland. They're going to bat in a similar spot and likely bowl 3 overs. All those other guys are 170k plus. So that's where the benefit it could be from grabbing someone like Edwards, is just around the price. And number 3, Vince or Philippi in round 3 could really work, along with Akil Haseen. So hopefully he comes back fit and firing, but just under 200k, it may be hard to slot him in. But do you move on from some of your Adelaide players? Do you move on from, if you have Maxwell, does he get moved on in round 3? Sorry, he won't get moved on in round 3. The Stars players you'll need in that round for sure. But that's the worry. It'd be Scorchers players only, so the Aaron Hardys. And then, can you get rid of any of your Adelaide players when they have a double in round 4 as well? So that's the tough one. So with the team makeup, the batting's pretty well locked in. You pick guys based on price and a chance to go big, like a Vince or Philippi at the top. Edwards and Haseen can have the really fun all-rounder roles for the double especially. And then all of these bowlers, they do a really good job for you in round 3. They're real top quality, and we know that this is a good team and will continue to be a good team, especially with Edwards moving into that gun all-rounder role, taking that away from Curran, who didn't play a lot of last year anyway. And then you've got Akil Haseen to come in and just be, we love O'Keefe, but a slightly better version across the park with fielding and with batting as well. And then the wild card, I think, in this team is Hayden Kerr. If he's going to be there, I think he's a watch over the first couple of weeks, and then you may select him in round 3. So that's the Sixers, guys. Remember to continue to pair all of these analysis with the other teams and how they best fit. Again, you're probably going to want 1 or 2 Sixers, 1 or 2 Heat in your team, whether it's cheapies, whether it's guys that are 130 and 140 and below, just to have a slot one of these guys in. Same with the Heat, which we'll get into in the next video. And just set yourself up best as you can for all of the rounds as possible. You don't want to have any real, unless they're a looper, any Thunder or any Hobart players really, unless they're a looper or they're super cheap. And just set yourself up for the first 3 to 4 rounds, where Adelaide have the double in round 4 as well, along with the Renegades. So you set yourself up with all these teams that have a couple of doubles, and then we build to the other teams from there. Thanks for listening to this Sixers preview for BBL. We're actually up and running in 11 days. First game is, so make sure you're getting your teams sorted, and I'll pop in some league codes as well, just some head-to-heads that we'll go through as well, which will be good fun. I'll pop them in, and I'll do a little overall setup as well, which will be fun. So see you guys. Have a good one.